going to go ahead and get started. We're going to give you guys a quick recap of what we did and what we covered last time. There were some main points that are really important and kind of integral in how you unpack visions and dreams. So the first one being context. We always want to look at the context of the things that are showing up within your dreams. Right, Matt?
Yep. Context is the very first thing that we speak. Often when people share their dreams, if they're in a safe place, they will share as much as physically possible. If they're wondering whether you're actually thinking they're weird, they will usually only share the safe things. And so often when you meet someone for the very first time, you kind of know that there's more to unpack. And so what I'm usually doing when I'm meeting someone with a dream is I'm encouraging them to speak out what that could mean. So is there a location? Is there an age that they are in the dream? All that sort of stuff is really helpful in unpacking any concept of what the greater message is. So context, like the Bible, context is really important if you want to understand what God is saying.
Great. And then the second one that we talked about that was important to look at are the themes that pop up within your dreams and visions.
Yeah, that's the very next thing that I encourage people to do. And most people can find the theme in a dream. And it doesn't usually take a long time to get that. And so the dream might be you're running away from something. So there's probably a fear inside of that. So like we were talking about some of the challenging dreams last week of finding yourself in bathrooms and showers and stuff like that. And the theme of that is vulnerability and things like that. So it's usually quite okay for people to find the theme in the dream. And for me, that's the key to unlock the dream itself. So find the theme of the dream. It rhymes. It's kind of corny, but it works.
But you'll remember it now from here on out. And the third one is the encouragements and the challenges, doing the quiet work to pick out what the encouragements are. And then what is the challenge? Because every word that the Father gives us is typically going to carry both. It's going to carry, the good word that we all want to hear, the encouragement, and then maybe the parts that are the challenging sections or portions of it.
Yeah. And that's how I teach hearing the Father's voice, not just in dreams, but in all things. And so whether it's the Bible, whether it's visions, whether it's through creation, whether it's looking through your hindsight, there's usually an encouragement and there's a challenge inside of it. And it's helpful in unpacking that in any concept of hearing the Father. The encouragement affirms you, but the challenge will grow you. The challenge is not there to condemn you because the Father does not condemn. There is no condemnation for those in Christ Jesus. I believe that for a part of the Father's character towards me. Therefore, when he challenges me, it's never to condemn me, it's to grow me. Some of those challenges can be tough. I'm not sort of treading lightly around that one. But I've found that in the greatest challenges of my life comes the greatest growth of my life. And so allowing myself to ask the question of the Father, what's the challenge here? It opens up a conversation of transformation and growth. Yeah,
that's fantastic. Again, so the encouragements will affirm us and the challenges will grow us. So that's awesome. That's great. And then the fourth one, the last point that we had on here was to always self-reflect first within your dreams and what's being said.
Yeah, I can't stress this one enough because often it's our dream space. It's the unscripted language that's going on inside of us. And often we will dream about other people. And the question I always draw people back to first, well, what would that look like if you were that person? And so if you're dreaming that you're the prime minister of a country or about the president of a country, the question is, what would it look like for you to be in that place of authority? Or what does that look like through your lens? It doesn't always work that way, but it's always a good question to ask first. So, because often, like if I have like you had a dream about your friend on retreat, the first question I would say, was that a dream for Courtney? And I'd allow her into that place first. And then when we've sort of ticked those boxes and she goes, no, there's actually something really powerful for who that friend is, then I would expand that to the person that you're in relationship with. And again, the essence of being in relationship is a really helpful way of sharing what God's actually doing. So self-reflection is something that I do on every one of my dreams. And when people come and say, can you help me with a dream? The first question is, the fourth question, is that what we're up to? Is what does it look like if we self-reflect? Yep.
Okay. All right. Very good. So before we get into the content that we're wanting to talk about today, we're going to be talking a lot about recurring dreams, but I wanted to start with a little bit more of kind of the science behind dreaming. I know that dream science and kind of digging out what science is coming to bringing to light about our dreams. I know it's something that you've studied quite a bit and in depth. So I wanted to ask the question, does every person dream? And is there a way to dream more?
Yes and yes. So dream science will tell you, or brain science will tell you, your brain never actually shuts off. And so when people tell me they're not dreaming, it's just that they're not remembering their dreams. And there's a pretty cool scientific way of helping you understand that. When we dream in our short-term memory. And so if you've ever woken up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning with a cracking dream that you think that you'll never forget, and then you wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning and you can't even find a thread for it, it's because everything's been stored in your short-term memory and you've gone back to sleep and it hasn't transferred to your long-term memory. And so you can't remember it. So something may happen during the day which goes, oh, I had a dream about that.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you can find the thread there. But often people don't remember their dreams because they've been dreaming, but it hasn't gone from short-term memory to long-term memory. There's a funny story about a very famous artist of Salvatore Dali who used to sleep with a bell in his hand. And so every time he fell asleep, the bell would drop and he would wake up and paint or draw whatever he was dreaming.
Wow.
Yeah, I understand he died quite young, and lack of sleep was probably a part of that. So I don't recommend that kind of thing at all. But it's this concept that what I encourage people to do is if they're waking up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning in dreams is to somehow write them down or record them. And I know that's challenging at that sort of time, but if you want to find that thread, then that's what I encourage. Brain science will always also tell you that the more that you value dreams, the more dreams you actually remember. That's a process of a journey. So it doesn't mean just today you've decided that you're going to value dreams more and therefore you're going to dream more tonight. But as you start walking with this, as you start listening to other people's dreams, as you start interpreting other people's dreams, you're going to find most likely that dreams are given. If you still can't dream, what I want to say is don't condemn yourself for that. Don't get upset with God for not giving you dreams. He's just choosing to communicate with you in other ways and shapes and forms. And we need to hear what those are as the kingdom of God, because he's sharing things with you that he's not sharing with us. And again, it's very important to discover just the ways that the Father speaks to us and the way he communicates. And now, when I'm teaching this in prophetic mentoring, I'm teaching 5 different ways, but there are probably an infinite amount of ways he chooses to communicate. And so don't feel down on yourself if you're there going, oh, I just wished I could have more dreams. But yeah, again, the simple fact is that if you value the dreams more, you're more likely to start having more dreams. What we're finding right now, because everyone's in isolation, there's a lot of anxiety in the world. It's really firing some of our internal subconscious, and we're actually dreaming for more at the moment. And so last week, Courtney, as you and I put out the call for dreams, we got a whole bunch.
Yeah, they did.
A whole bunch. And just want to encourage you guys that we are treating those things confidentially, and we will get back to you with every one of them as well.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So let's get into it. That's a big question. I've seen a lot. I've heard a lot over the last week. What does it mean when you have a reoccurring dream?
Yeah. Let me just start by saying that everyone's dream space is unique. And so when I say give general concepts or topics, one size doesn't fit everything into it. We need to be okay with the concept that you might, and again, like I said last week, you might disagree with some of the stuff that I say, but again, I never want that disagreement to get in the way of relationship. Okay, so so some of the things that I'm saying, I'm fully aware that some people go, yep, that's not what I believe for or anything like that. But the concept of the reoccurring dream for me is there is often a place where like the record player gets stuck. If you've ever watched the incredible movie called The Matrix, it's like a glitch in the Matrix, as they like to say. There's something seems to have gone wrong, or there's something that the Father wants to keep taking you back to either heal or to teach. And so reoccurring dreams aren't always difficult dreams. They can actually be quite beautiful dreams, but he keeps taking us back to the same place.
Mm-hmm.
So you might always dream about finding yourself on the beach, or finding yourself in a mountain range, or something that's utterly beautiful. And again, that's not an evidence of a trauma or a challenging time. That's just an evidence of a secret place that the Father's leading you to want to speak to you and for you to rest with him. But often when people come to me with recurring dreams, it's because there's been a trauma inside of their life at some point that they're trying subconsciously to work out. And they keep finding themselves coming to a brick wall, or they keep finding themselves coming to a dead end. Yeah.
Right. And I'm just looking at the comments here, and someone asked, like, how does that apply if maybe the same person is popping up? Maybe it's not necessarily a recurring dream itself, but if the same person is continually popping up in your dreams.
Yep. And so again, we look at both that as an encouragement or a challenge, and it's depending on who that person is. Let me give you an example. There was a person who came and saw me who had been through a high level of abuse by a family member, and every single night she went to bed and she dreamt about that particular family member, and it was obviously a very traumatic dream. And so for something like 30 years, she'd had that dream night after night after night after night. And so when we helped to unpack that dream, that the very night she went back to sleep, and she went back to the same place, but this time the perpetrator had been removed from the dream and Jesus had been added to the dream. And so the next thing is you get this, I got an email from her just going, 30 years of bondage is now set free.
Wow.
This is like a story we get on repeat, because it's like a glitch of something that's happened that they can't get their head around, like a betrayal of trust or abuse that's happened that should never have happened. But they've been going to bed every night fearing their dream, and so they don't get any rest. And so it's journeying with a person to help them unpack it. And so again, not every single time you interpret a difficult dream like that does it automatically undo. Sometimes there's a journey that's out of that place, but helping a person unpack a reoccurring dream and not just sweep it under the carpet. Because again, like I said last week, so often in our culture, particularly in the West, we don't value dream space. And therefore we just tell people it's just a dream, go back to sleep. Right. It's just a dream, don't worry about it. Yeah. It's just a dream. You don't need to worry yourself with it. And so again, it says to our subconscious that, well, you must be lying to me. Or it says to our subconscious, our message is not essentially that important. And so it devalues it. And so once we lose the value inside of that place, it becomes very difficult then for us to understand why we're dreaming these things on repeat.
Right.
Now, if a person keeps coming back as a recurring and it's a good thing, the question is I'm asking, like, who is it and what are they doing and what are they actually adding into your life? And so I would be asking the question, who are they in the kingdom of God? What is their identity? What do they add? What do they bring? That phrase that I love to use, you leak what you carry. Whatever it is the Father has placed in you will flow from you. Well, that person, ask the question, like, what is it they're leaking? And you'll probably find that there's a Jesus component to that that's actually been placed in your dream space to be very helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also love whenever a specific person pops up in my dreams, whether it's someone famous or someone I know, I always like to dig into the meaning of their name. Yeah. Because typically for me, when I see someone named Kate or Katie or Catherine in my dreams, that's kind of a sure shot for me that I know that's representing the church because of what the name represents and the name itself actually means. So that's another tool that you can kind of put in your bag there to help unpack a little bit of that too, if you're just at a complete loss for that one.
And just with that sort of stuff too, like you look at the name meaning, but often that person might mean something to you as well.
Right.
So that's why at times you can't just take a name and go, that's what it is for everything.
Right.
Context is really
context.
And but that's exactly what I do as well. I was interpreting a dream yesterday with the same concept that some random person turned up in the dream. And who is this person? I don't know that person. Well, let's look at the name of that person. Okay.
Right.
It's a helpful thing to do.
Yeah. Very good. Okay. So, how do you tell the difference between a dream that might be an attack or one that's maybe a warning from God?
Yep. So, and if we continue that concept of the recurring moment, like that's an interesting concept as well, because often people think that nightmares are just demonic attacks.
Yeah.
Now, they can very well be. I'm not denying that as well, because again, when we're unconscious or and working in our subconscious, there's a level of vulnerability that occurs in that sort of space as well.
Right.
And like, I reckon Satan loves to try and attack us when we are at our least guarded, like Jesus in the wilderness, 40 days without food, and he decides to turn up and encourage him to turn a rock into a loaf of bread. And so I don't deny that at all. And so often with the concept of a difficult dream being a demonic attack, yep, that's something that I look at quite carefully. I don't declare that every nightmare is a demonic attack. I think, like I said last week, nightmares wake us up in places of trauma that we need to understand rather than push away. And I am fully aware that understanding a trauma is no simple process that we just go, okay, I've got that, let's just move on. For me, if I can use a metaphor of the Bible, that's a plowing up the hard ground of the heart moment. Because a trauma hardens your heart to something. And if it hardens your heart, it's the hardness in the Bible means it's in unbelief. So you can't believe that anymore. And so if something's happened to you at a relational point of view, or a community point of view, a church point of view, or a professional point of view, your heart hardens so you can no longer trust. And see, so often people leave relationships or leave churches or leave communities because of a breach of trust, and there's a hardness that happens in that. But in our dream space, this is the place where the Father is starting to turn that soil and to break that stuff up. And that's a metaphor that sounds very easy to say, but it takes a journey of helping a person through that place, which is kind of why I love doing this sort of stuff one-on-one with people, because it allows for a greater level of conversation to help them understand what's actually happened inside of that. And so some people may need to sit down with a counselor to process some of that sort of stuff inside of their world and their life. Some people sit down with me for deliverance, and so we can help them process it from that point of view. But this is, for me, is a very holistic statement. It's not just about saying that a difficult situation or a bad dream or a trauma in a dream is demonic, or it's God, or it's neither of those. It's allowing that to be a conversation with a person, and you'll discover that as you work with a person, they allow yourself into that place of dream space. And what I've found, that when you create those safe places of loving, no condemnation, healing actually automatically starts. Deliverance already starts, simply by listening into that place and understanding why that dream has happened, who that person is. And again, we start looking at context and themes.
Yeah. And I also think it's really good too to look at like the overall, if we're going back again to the themes and we're going back to the encouragements or to the challenges there, if we're picking apart a dream to find those key elements too, I'm always on the lookout for, is this hopeless? Is fear the voice that's speaking and ruling, in this dream space? Is there a solution? Is there any space for that there? Or is this all rooted in something that is not meant to bring about anything encouraging or anything positive at all out of it?
And feelings feelings, like you say, Courtney, and that's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up, because feelings are a very important thing in this sort of ministry as well. It's not that we discern everything by our feelings, but they are a very helpful indicator as to what's happening in the dream. And so often I'll hear a dream and I'll read it and I think, wow, that's a challenging dream. But the person will tell me, I actually felt a lot of peace in that dream.
Yeah.
Well, I go with what they're saying rather than what I'm thinking, because I'm reading it through my lens. And so when you feel something, now Christian churches, like if you ask a person how to test a dream or how to test the voice of God, most times they'll say, do I have a peace on that? Now, it's a great place to start, but it's definitely not the only place to be. For example, when Jonah was told to go to Nineveh, I do not think, I'm a lot of years out of history, But I doubt whether he'd gone, yeah, I've got a real peace on that. Let's just do that. I think he went, God just said something. I know I'm supposed to do it. It's the last thing I actually want to do, and therefore I'm not. And so when we value everything of God's voice around, do I have a peace on it? We can then allow our emotions or our feelings to speak louder than the voice of God. Mm-hmm. And so the feeling of a dream, the feeling of a vision is a very important place to actually unpack as mm-hmm. well. And in the feeling, as you know, Trisha's a counselor, my wife is a counselor, and she talks about how feelings are messages. And there are messages that need to be heard to be understood. And it's in the understanding that you find whether there's truth or there's a lie or there's something else going on inside of that. And so when you're unpacking your dream, the feelings are a very important thing to navigate as messages and not just as laid out truths. And so what's the message? And so you spoke about the voice of fear. Yep, it has a voice. The voice of condemnation, it has a voice. The voice of unworthiness, it has a voice. And in our culture, particularly here in Australia, we are very used to those voices, and particularly in the culture that we have right now, where the COVID-19 stuff is, it's everywhere. And so there's a voice of fear that often can be very loud. And again, when you hear it, you feel it. And so then you need to unpack it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay. So let's change gears just a little bit. And I got this question quite a bit, but can anyone interpret a dream, Matt? And if so, where do you begin?
Yep. The answer is yes. Anyone can interpret a dream. Yep. Yeah. I guess whether you get it right or wrong, you can still interpret it.
Yeah. That's true.
But again, like I said last week, dream interpretation is not an exact science. You can't just go, well, the color blue means royalty, therefore it always means royalty. You've got to take context as this point of view. Anyone can interpret dreams because from what I've discovered, anyone can really find the theme and what the side of what that dream is. So you can have some level of handle on it. The intricacies of dreams are in all the detail. And so when people get a weird one, they just go, man, my mind is just blown and I can't get my brain around that. And I really need to speak with someone about that because there's all these weird things that are happening inside of it. We have to slow those dreams down to unpack them, to understand them. Okay. And you'll always find that that's it because there's so much weirdness there. We just go too much, too confused, put that away.
Check it.
I'll wait until I see someone who knows what they're talking about before they do. Because I've been doing this kind of stuff for over 20 years, you grow very familiar with the concept of the metaphor, the meanings of things. And so for me, you can pick up on things fairly quickly because of how long I've been doing it for. And I'm not sure if I used the Bill Johnson prophecy from last week, but the concept was that he's just prophesied back at Awakening Australia that what has been learned in a generation we've now passed on in months. And this is part of my passion for doing this kind of ministry as well. I've learned a lot over those years and I want to pass those things on so that every one of us can have a head start on this and not just sit around scratching my head or Googling things and just going, gee, I hope that's the right thing.
Yeah.
What I've discovered, the most powerful way to interpret dreams is in a community.
Yes.
And I think that was a question you're going to have for later on, but I'm just changing tact on you right now.
No, you're good.
Oh, good. Okay.
You're good. You're good. I did want to stop here before we jump into do you have more to say? Okay. This is a question I'm going to throw one out at you too. Do you ever find that there's progressive revelation from a dream where maybe you've had a dream, you have revelation on it for a while, life goes on for a little bit, and then boom, here comes some more revelation from the dream or out of that dream later on? Yeah,
100%. That's like prophecy. Some prophecies that you receive, you go, I have no handle on any of that. I don't know when that's going to happen. I don't know how that's going to happen.
Right.
Is that even a prophecy? Is where your brain goes to. It's the same with dreams. And then all of a sudden you realize 6 months down the track, it's like, oh, that's actually happening. That's occurring now. These things are moving. These things are happening. And it's like all the prophecies of the dreams of the Bible. Like you go right back to Joseph, and he prophesied 7 years of abundance, 7 years of difficult or challenge. And in those first 7 years of abundance, everyone would have been high-fiving themselves and going, how good is this? But waiting for that next moment to happen would have been a challenge, right? And so again, you don't know what that's going to look like until you get there. And it's like the Apostle Paul was saying, prophesying is like looking through a veil. You only know clearly once you get through that space. And I think in teaching this sort of stuff is lifting some of the veils from us so that we can move closer to the place of going, okay, now I'm actually getting it. Now I'm seeing it. Now I'm valuing it. And now I believe that God is speaking through it.
Yeah, I think it just brings it a little bit closer so that we can grab it and hold on to it and actually interact with it. It's not something that it's, we're not meant to touch and we're not meant to examine. There's freedom in the kingdom and with the Father to be able to step into these places of what we're seeing through vision, what we're seeing through dreams, to come in and grab hold of it and actually interact with it. I think that that's where I feel a lot of people kind of get caught up, is that, oh, I've had this vision. I can't touch it. I can't interact. I can't ask questions with it. And that's just not the truth. That's not how the Father, I think, is open and welcoming to those questions and wants to walk with us through that place of relationship to take us and bring us to the place of where we move from, like we're going to talk about here in a minute, to metaphor to application.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And that's a question that Ruth's just asked as well, by saying, how do we know the difference between what is literal and what is metaphorical? And again, as people who love logic, we would like that when this happens, that's the outcome. 1 + 1 must equal 2 is what our logical brains define. But when it means anything other than that, we just start going to a place of, well, I don't know what to believe. The component of faith is an important conversation in this too, because to believe in what you can't yet see, that's called faith. It's when you're dreaming and you're going, is this literal? Is this metaphorical? That's when you have to take a dream one step at a time. And you're looking for those markers that are inside of the dream that help you understand what is literal. And so again, if it's literal for the moment, you'll be dreaming about things that are occurring in the day, in the time, and you're looking for those things to step out in faith upon. Okay. Sometimes you get it wrong. Sometimes I get it wrong. And that's what, I think any one of us, we've got to be able to be prepared to be okay with getting stuff wrong every now and then. Because again, we don't know all things. We can't see all things. But this is why dream interpretation in community is really helpful for understanding literal and metaphorical, because you have a lot of different people's eyes on the one dream.
Right.
And everyone's got something of the kingdom in their heart. And that's why I listen for everyone's dream. Now, Courtney, you've done prophetic mentoring groups with me twice. Now, I'm assuming, I should have asked you this question before, but I'm assuming you've seen the value of doing this stuff in community.
Yes, it's always interesting to me to see the threads and to see the commonalities that pop up amongst people. And that's really where you're honing in on something, at least for me. And it's always interesting to me to see who hones in on what, because you talk to us a lot in prophetic mentoring and in a lot of the messages that you do, that when a prophecy comes through you, when a vision or a dream comes through you, the Father has chosen you for a specific reason to pass that through. That's because you carry certain gifts, you carry a certain lens, you carry a certain anointing, or whatever it is that the Father has given to you to pass through you. So it's always interesting to me in these community spaces to see what each individual person picks up on and what passes through that person, because I know that there's gold that's going to come out of that based on what the Father has put in that specific person as well.
Yeah. That's some of the gold of the kingdom of God, which is this is part of the beauty of the way we're even doing church right now, where every person has a voice and every person has the Spirit of the living God within them. Therefore speak. Do we always get it right? No, we don't. But most times the words that keep flowing out of people are utterly incredible. I use a phrase, and you've probably heard me use it before, that what you overcome in life is what you have authority over in life. And so whatever a person's come through and has a victory in or overcoming in, it's like they have an authority to speak from that place. And so if someone has come through depression and overcome it, if I'm feeling depressed, I am more than willing to sit down with that particular person because they carry an overcoming spirit of depression, and the faith that they have is infectious, and you just want it. So if someone's going through a relational turmoil, and if you know that someone's gone through that, you want to sit with them to gain what they've got, and so that leaking what you carry kind of moment. And this is when we're in community. Like you say, every single one of us in community have overcome something in life. And if we can actually speak from that place of authority, you actually start seeing the bride of Christ working together so powerfully. Yes. And I'm not being asked to speak for the hand if I'm the foot. Okay? Yeah. If I do that, I'm speaking from a place of I don't know what I'm talking about, and I'm hoping it comes out okay. And so, like, there's some parts of the Bible that you go, well, Matt, can you give me an understanding on Leviticus? Well, no, I can't, because I haven't spent the time inside of it to understand it and unpack it. One day I may do, but if you ask me for an exegetical message on Leviticus, I will go, yeah, I could have a crack at that. But I want to speak from the things that the Father's done and spoken in me, and I want to listen to the things that the people have come through. And so when you're doing this stuff in dream interpretation, you're listening to different people's lenses. You're listening to what they have overcome, and you all of a sudden get a better view of what this dream is about. The problem that we have in so many churches is we don't value dreams, or we don't even value visions. And so nobody talks about it. So it becomes this secret thing that's actually happening. Oh, go and see Courtney. She's the one who does visions.
Yeah.
Go and see Kirsty. She's the one who does this sort of stuff. Or go and see Sarah. She's the one who does this kind of stuff. That's not the way the body of Christ was designed to work. We were never meant to hide.
Right.
We're meant to be seen. And when I say be seen, for the things that the Father's done in and through us, and the love that we carry. So again, for this concept of understanding dreams and visions, it's listening to the people that the Father has placed in your life. And you'll find that every one of them has some level of gold in it if you release them and give them permission to speak into it.
Right.
It sounds so simple, but it is. Like, you don't have to be an expert in everything of the Bible to be a great Christian. You just need to know who you are and what you're carrying. And so when you come into the conversation, you can bring what the Holy Spirit's doing inside your life. Right. I've probably gone off track a long way there.
No, I'll get you back. We're good. No, that was very necessary. So thank you for that. Because we were talking about how to move from metaphor to application, or that's where we were heading. You know, we have all these dreams, you know, we're doing all this stuff to pull out themes, pulling out challenges and encouragements. We're self-reflecting, we're doing all this stuff. But how do we take it? Where do we begin when we start to break down the metaphors to move them from metaphor to actual application in our lives?
Yeah. And that's, I'm forever doing that with folk as well, because again, people love to use metaphors to hide what's actually really going on in their lives. Yep. And so the concept of walking through a dark valley becomes something for Courtney, but it's something different for me. But if I say it, what I'm saying is I'm going through a tough time now, Courtney, and I don't want you to know what that is. And so when people are saying that to me in ministry, I'm saying, well, explain to me what the dark valley is. And my opinion of you will not change if you actually share that. And it's the same with dreams. Like, people send through some pretty vulnerable kind of dreams. My opinion of you doesn't change by doing that. I'm still seeing you the way that the Father sees you. And so inside of that concept is bringing us back to a place of, it's, again, you can hear the identity concept inside of that too, can't you?
So powerful.
Yeah, and part of me just keeps coming back to that. But the metaphor, if you look at the book of Psalms, there's so much metaphor in the book of Psalms, and songs, there's so much metaphor in songs, and we sing them with all of our hearts. But often we leave it in a place of metaphor, and if we don't get to the place of understanding. And what I find, that things that stay in the metaphor, particularly in songs and sermons, is they then get cliched. So we can sing about, so we have a brilliant song out of Hillsong called New Wine, and it's so powerful. But if it leaves it in the place of the metaphor, then we leave it in the place of, well, we don't really know. But as soon as I start talking about in the pressing that they sing about, I look to see what that means. And all of a sudden the song absolutely becomes a prophecy and comes alive. And it's one of the things I so much enjoy about some of the music that's flowing over the kingdom right now, is there's so many prophetic words, but they usually start in places of metaphor where our dreams often are. So what I look for is like how people dream. So if people do ministry with me, I usually meet with them every fortnight for 2 or 3 weeks. And in the fortnight, I'm looking for the dreams that they've had in that fortnight. And I look for the theme that are in all of those dreams. And so the metaphors inside of it may be all different, but there's probably a theme inside of it. And the theme will talk to something specifically that's going on inside of the person, either for the future, for the past, or the present. Okay? And so you might have 5 different dreams in that time, and they might be all in 5 different locations, but there will be a theme that's flowing through your unscripted language internally. And so again, it's why it's like with Sarah with her dream dictionary or dream books and diaries that you have, Sarah. Absolutely love them. I feel like it's like you open those places of treasure up when you open those up in front of me, and I feel so privileged when you allow me into that place. But in reading them through, it's the theme that I'm looking for, and allowing that theme to be the language. So the metaphors that are there are now becoming a theme, which then we're looking to identify that into a person's life literally. And it's in that literal place where you have application, and you also have some level of accountability as well. So if the Father's calling you into something, so he might be putting in you a dream about reconciliation with somebody, and that person just keeps on coming up, and there's different metaphors inside of that. The question I'm asking you in accountability, okay, what does that look like? Is that something you feel like the Lord is actually bringing that person to you so that we can interact in that space and see that level of reconciliation? How does that look? Well, let's understand the theme of the dream. It doesn't look like condemnation to me. It might look like we're opening our hearts up again and allowing a place for a coffee, allowing a place for a conversation. So it's stuff like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you ever feel like when you go to unpack a metaphor and you go to take it from metaphor to application, do you ever come across the fact that there's maybe multiple meanings for whatever metaphor or whatever it is that you're pulling apart at that moment?
Yeah, I do. Because part of the concept of understanding even any prophecy or vision that you've been given is when is it for and what does it mean?
Yeah.
The dreams are the interesting ones because they often connect all of those dots together. Something of your past, something of your present, something of the future. Something of the past might be something difficult that you're depressed about. Something of the future might be something unknown that you might be anxious about. But again, it's allowing that to be a conversation rather than just, this is just something I ate last night and therefore I had that dream. You're actually giving it that conversation. So what does that mean for our past? What does that mean for our present? And what does that mean for our future?
Okay.
Yeah. It's
very good.
Yeah, it's those future dreams which are interesting as well because they're prophetic moments because the Father's giving us a heads up often of the things that we're about to encounter. And the voice of fear, like you said earlier, will often keep us out of the future. So it'll destroy Yeah, absolutely. It destroys our hope. If we can't believe for the future, it destroys our hope of the future as well. And so, and that's where the demonic attack is a part of that process of stealing, killing, and destroying, as John 10 would say. And so often our language sticks in that place of fear or guilt, shame, or condemnation, and it prevents us from looking to the future. And it gets kind of overwhelming when we have dreams of the future. And so if we have a good dream of the future, we go, oh, that's just too good to be true.
Yeah. Or
that's just a fairy tale. And what we're doing is we're disempowering the prophecy and we're empowering the voice of fear. And the voice of fear is kind of like one of those voices as well. The more we listen to it, the more it stays the same. And you know how the Bible says what we fear most will actually happen. Like that's often what occurs inside of our lives because we spend so much time concentrating on the fear that we don't understand the challenge inside of that to grow us past those moments, to draw us into transformation.
I actually want to take a second to read a verse here from Psalm 16:7. This is in the Passion Translation, and it says, "The way you counsel and correct me makes me praise you more." And so that to me goes back to the encouragement of counsel being encouragement and then correction being the challenge to get us moving in the direction that the Father has planned for us. So the way you counsel and correct me makes me praise you more. For your whispers in the night give me wisdom, showing me what to do next. And I think I loved when you hit on that concept of hope. Like if there is hope in the dream, if there's life in the dream, if there's that, you can find the thread of that voice. And if you cannot, opening that space up to the one who always speaks hope.
Yeah.
Will take whatever, even if something's thrown at you from the enemy, some of those places can be really powerful places of victory. I just think that that's so good.
Yeah. And I think, Courtney, every one of us can relate to that too.
Yeah.
And again, look for the people the Father has placed around you,
yeah.
because there's voices of hope inside of them.
Yeah.
They stand often out of our dark valley, but they're more than willing to walk with us through that valley.
Right. Right.
They may not be experiencing the things that we are, but don't dismiss them because they don't understand it. Allow the voice of hope to be a voice that drives you to the feast table or walks you to the feast table. Maybe that's a better way of putting it, of Psalm 23. Right. Psalm 23 is an awesome metaphor, I think, of David's testimony. And like one day I'll get to ask him that question. But we all have Psalm 23 sort of happening inside of our own spirit at times. And it's allowing ourselves to navigate those places and understanding who the Father draws alongside of us and ministers to us through as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Community is massively, massively important, and it's so, so powerful, and not just unpacking, visions and dreams, but in testing and in bringing the people alongside of you that you might need to walk out the things that the Lord's bringing up. So our last question, our last concept we want to cover today before we get into our rapid fire, we've got some awesome suggestions and people want to know what some of these symbols mean. But the last one that we want to wrap up with today is what happens in our dream space? Are we interacting with heaven in the dream and vision space?
Yeah, I saw that question come through, or you might have sent it to me straight away after our last session. And I actually love that question. So are we interacting with heaven? Well, yes. Let me just put it in a yes, and let me quickly help you understand that, because I think there is no place that you can go on this planet where you can escape God. David worked that out 3,000 years ago, and he reckons if he went to the top of the tallest mountain or the bottom of the deepest ocean, he would not be able to escape from him. The Father has planted eternity within us, and the Spirit of the living God abides within us, and as we abide with him. So there is everywhere he is. And so I am a believer that we have a constant open heaven. I don't think that I need to ask for an open heaven. I believe I have one because I have Christ. And Christ, as you said to Nathaniel, is that stairway to heaven, or that staircase to heaven. And so I believe that the Father is constantly in us, through us, empowering us, living, alive, all of those concepts. So I think when we're actually doing communication, I think when we're having coffee together, the kingdom is upon us and the kingdom is ministering to us. So that's a big answer to a question, but I think that's the way the Father, that's how I see the Father with me. I don't think that he is a distant God. I think he is a present God. I believe that his love is in you as it's in me, as it's in every person that's around. Sometimes people don't recognize that, but I think every space of dream, vision, heaven is there. It's there.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So on to some of the symbols that people are asking questions about currently. One of the ones that I saw that I found was interesting, honestly, because I've been dreaming about them a lot lately as well, are tornadoes.
Yep. And so context is really important for that as well. So there in Oklahoma, where tornado warnings happen fairly regularly, there's a constant fear that associated with what is about to happen. So context is really important. If you are in a place where tornadoes happen regularly and tornadoes are being forecast or there, then that's a context moment. And I would understand that and unpack that from a context moment. Here in Australia, tornadoes aren't as common as what they are in America. And when I grew up, I thought they only happened in America and they only happened on Wizard of Oz. But if you're dreaming about it and there's no context for it, then it feels like there's an enormous destruction that's about to be upon you, or an enormous move of what might be happening that's completely out of your control. That can both be a bad thing and it can be a good thing. And the context of the dream will tell me what that is. And so even with the metaphor of the Wizard of Oz, Dorothy was lifted to another land to have a greater encounter with the great Oz, which in the kingdom point of view, we're looking for an encounter with Jesus. And when we get there, we don't find a little guy behind a microphone. We find the king in all of his glory. But it's that sort of concept that you look at the context of it.
Okay. Tsunamis. This is a big one that's come up a lot lately.
Yep. Tsunamis and dreams. Again, it's interesting because traditionally lots of Christians have thought that destruction is God's hand of judgment on the earth. And I think that it's probably one way of looking at it, but I definitely look at the Father through the lens of love more than I do through the lens of judgment, because he is about restoring and reforming the bride of Christ and renewing. Mm-hmm. And so when I see a tsunami, so tidal waves, if you've listened to anything that Lana and I have done over the last year or so, that theme or motif has come up often and regularly. It's a great move of the Holy Spirit across a land. And again, it's outside of our control, and it's something that's impossible to stand against. I think right now we are in that moment of the tsunami moving across a world. And I'm not saying that COVID-19 is that tsunami, but glory is coming to God through that. That's bringing and drawing the bride of Christ forward in its pure and undefiled state. So,
yeah, fantastic. Saving people from crashes or danger or some sort of calamity.
Yep. It usually shows the compassion that you carry. The Father has got a thing inside of you which is drawing people to places of safety, and in places of safety they can heal, which probably shows that either you have a gift of compassion or you have a gift of healing.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. Well, that's it for that. We actually have some dreams that you guys sent in. So we have a couple that we're going to just unpack live for you guys. So I'll be reading them out. And after that, Matt will just go ahead and start to give a little bit of a breaking down of how to understand these and how to step through this and what this looks like. Okay, so this first dream is shared with permission from Margaret from New South Wales. She says here, my most frequent dreams have been falling and hitting bottom and also fighting with the enemy forcefully in tongues. I wear myself out emotionally with crying and wake up a mess emotionally and physically, so I get little sleep. Can you help me to try and understand what it is that's happening? Thank you so much, Margaret.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Margaret, because that's, again, like that beautiful places of vulnerability. And again, vulnerability, if you listen to anything that Brené Brown does on vulnerability, you'll be blessed, but it brings healing. Places of falling means that there's some parts of your life feeling like you're out of control. Mm-hmm. And rarely actually do people actually dream about landing. They usually wake up before they get there. And often if you find yourself, you've actually landed in a place where you've died, again, it's very rare to dream about you actually dying in a dream, because you usually wake up before that moment happens. The fact that you can remember that you've landed shows that you haven't died, and that shows that there is still life. The feeling of being out of control or even speaking in tongues to ward off the enemy and stuff like that. Normally that shows that you've been doing this stuff for alone for too long, and that there are other people that the Father is now raising up around you to support you and to encourage you in this battle as well. Because again, whatever the demonic attack that's inside of that's trying to steal, kill and destroy, we want to be able to help people unpack and understand that. And in community, that happens powerfully and well. But falling is like feeling out of control, trying to ward off a spiritual attack by speaking in tongues. It's what often churches actually teach. And again, I've no issue with speaking in tongues, do it myself. But if we only believe that our last resort is to speak in tongues for a demon to flee, then I just want to encourage you to expand your horizons a bit, because there are people around you right now that have authority, and that when you're collectively together, the body is actually working stronger. So, Margaret, I'm just encouraging you, and I hope that's helpful. If there's anything more to that, don't hesitate to email in.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, great. This next one is sent, this person would like to stay anonymous. So obviously very respectful of that. But this person is back in high school and they've not done any of the work for the classes and they have failing grades. The semester is nearly over or is over. And they know if they don't get their assignments done, their parents will see the report card and she will be in huge trouble. So she's terrified and has a gnawing ache in the pit of her stomach. She's aware that it's her fault and she's failing. But in each dream, I'm trying to meet with my teachers to see if they will help me to know what my assignments are and give me extra time to get them done. I wake up before I can meet with the teachers and I'm still in a state of worry and anxiety. And then, of course, as I awaken more fully, I'm relieved to remember that I'm 48 years old and haven't had to do homework in many years, and my parents will not be getting my report card. She says that one time recently I dreamed the same dream, but this time I was able to talk with my teacher. So again, we're seeing that recurring thing coming back up. And the teacher lovingly told her that he would help her find out what her assignments were and would give her time to complete them without consequence. She woke up with complete peace. However, since she's had the peaceful one, the dream happened again, but this time it took another turn. And once again, she was sick to her stomach, worrying because she hadn't done her assignments, knew she would be in trouble with failing grades. It was at the end of the school year, and she went to her teachers to beg for mercy. In her dream, she was sitting in class, listening to the teacher lecture and plotting what she might say to the teacher at the end of the class. But the teacher was lecturing, and suddenly a boy from behind her was catapulted over the desks and slammed his head into the cinder block wall. The boy is a college student that she and her husband are currently mentoring, and she's watched him grow up. As a child, she says he's painfully shy and soft-spoken, but a really good kid. And since she knew him in her dream, she knew that it wasn't his fault that he came flying over the desks. It was clear that he was just an innocent fallout of some other boys messing around. The teacher ran to him in a panic, and it was very graphic and grotesque as she scooped him up and tried to put him back together. She and everyone else in the room were very upset, and she caught the teacher's eye and said, "It's going to be okay. He's going to be fine." And the teacher looked at her with terror in her eyes and said, "No, it's not. It's too late." And at that point, she woke up.
Yeah. And again, thanks for sharing that dream. Mm-hmm. The concept inside of it, one, the person who's dreaming it, they also have a gift of compassion and healing and faith. You can hear it. So something so terrible happens. She's still in a place of believing that this is going to be okay, even when the voice of authority is telling her it's not. It's interesting in this dream because the teacher inside of the dream is usually a place of authority, and that's the way you interpret it. Going back to school, particularly when you're in your 40s, it's that place of unworthiness or unqualified or not good enough. So I have to go back and relearn things that I should have known, I should have got hold of, I should have done, and finding yourself in places of condemnation if you don't.
Yeah.
Now, strangely enough, that's a religious spirit as well. And I don't know if you've been a part of a church where they determine that this is what you have to do. This is to be right with God. This is what you have to say. This is the things you have to wear. This is what you have to, how you have to serve. If there's always that concept that it's not good enough, not worthy, you can hear that's an underlying theme or motif in the story. But in the middle of the dream, another teacher turns up.
Jesus.
Yeah. Absolutely. And he leads her into a place of, we can do this and we're going to do this together.
Right.
She wakes up in that perfect place of peace. And so in a dream like that, what I'm saying is that this person who's had this dream has been led from a place of unworthiness to a place of compassion, a place of healing and restoration, where she's mentoring other kids that have been hurt about in this process, where they've been cut down. And so again, what you overcome in life is what you have authority over in life. So this is a woman who has grown up in a place where unworthiness, or a man, I'm not even sure, where the concept is that whatever that is, that's now been transformed and changed to a place of renewal and restoration.
Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful. All right, last dream. I'm hoping I'm saying this right. Rahel from Germany. This dream he sent in, it says that a little boy, I guess something like 2 years of age, somehow got to them. I'm not sure how. I believe I was in a shopping mall. So during the dream, I tried to somehow get him back to his mom. At first, he didn't want to go back to her. So I talked with him, and at one point, I found the words to convince him, and he agreed with searching for her. Then I faced the problem that I didn't know the name of his mom. But somehow I came to listen to a conversation and heard that her name was Kirsten. That helped me to find out her number. But when I tried calling her, my phone was going crazy, not doing what I wanted it to do. I tried my best, but didn't come to call her.
Yeah. You can hear inside of the theme of that dream, there's a restorative motif inside of that. And so there's a 2-year-old inside of there that he's trying to bring back into a place of restoring into family. Yeah. Did you say it's a he who had that dream?
Rahel.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that's, I'm sorry, forgive me.
That's okay. I'm not very good on my German either. It's been really interesting, actually. We've had a few people contact us from Germany as well, and very interested in the theme of those dreams as well.
Yeah.
But inside of this, there's a restorative motif, but there's also a confusion of how do I do this? I can't do this. The phones and dreams and visions usually relate to our connection with God, and we're trying to get a line through to him. I don't know if anyone has ever said to you, well, your prayers are a direct line to God. It's that kind of metaphor that we help people understand when they're trying to use their phones and they're not working, they're not communicating. It feels like I've been cut off and I can't get this message through to God. I can't bring this place of restoration. Children in dreams and visions, particularly if you don't know them, can mean 2 things. They can mean physical children, or they can mean people very young in the faith.
Yes.
Okay, and it's restoring that into the family, restoring that into the home. And so that the mother inside of that dream, or looking for the mother, it's the bride of Christ, and looking to how to bring these people back in. And so often people have dreams like this, are people who carry those, they do discipleship really well. They can walk beside people, they can encourage them, they can just really empower them to live out the fullness of what God's got in their life. But again, you can hear inside of the dream, here's a person who's dreaming that has a real restorative heart.
Yes.
Really cool to have a conversation with that person too, because they want to see the bride of Christ united, whole, and in communication.
And I zeroed in on the name of the mother, Kirsten, because I thought that was unique. And that actually means, the definition of that name means Christian.
Oh, wow.
It's just another beautiful, level to add to that yes, there is a restoration, or there's a restorative call being there to return the children back to
that's cool,
that place of family. So that's fantastic.
Connect with Greater Things International on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, or at greaterthingsinternational.com.